Next up, we have three established researchers that will speak to us on how to plot our research career. They will each share a bit about their own experience, and then we'll have another engaging Q&A afterwards. So I'd like to introduce for you Professor David Hedding. He's a geomorphologist and he's an associate professor at the Department of Geography at the University of South Africa. He's been awarded the UNISA Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Research multiple times, and he was the president of the South African Association of Geomorphologists. He's currently working in cold climates and high altitude environments. So he will be sharing with us. We also have Associate Professor Sebastian Swart, all the way from Gothenburg University in Sweden. He's an oceanographer, and he is focused in understanding the circulation and dynamics of the open ocean, in particular the Southern Ocean. So he's also an ex-SANA PI, currently living in Sweden, and he'll be sharing a bit more on how to make your career more international. We also have Professor Bettine van Vuuren. She's currently the head of Department of Zoology at the University of Johannesburg, and she's a molecular ecologist, and she will be sharing on, she's also the current chair of the South African National Committee for SCAR.
All right, so good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of you know, how I got into science and just some things that some postgraduate students and early career researchers need to think about in terms of plotting their career and you know, taking their science to the next level. So thank you, Liesl, for the introduction. So yes, I'm a geomorphologist. So what that means is I basically just look at Earth surface processes and how they respond to climate change. My journey began in 2000. I started university. I didn't initially start in geography. As things happen, you know, many people start doing something and realize that it's not for them and decide to change. So, but my primary degree is in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and during my undergrad years, I realized that I enjoyed being out in the mountains more than in computer labs. So I eventually made the switch to an honors in geography in 2003. I was very fortunate in that during this time I was in I applied or was asked to do a project on Marion, and that was my first trip to Marion Island in 2003 as an honors student. I then overwintered on Marion in 2004 and 2005. I was a field assistant on the island, and I think that's probably the thing that shaped my career the most, is living and working on Marion was such a special experience, and I was very fortunate, and it's basically shaped my career since then. I finished my master's in end of 2005, and I graduated in 2006. And then I took up a position at University of Northwest in Mafeking now, yeah. So I didn't follow the traditional route of, you know, being a full-time student all the way through until I finished a PhD. I actually I didn't have the luxury of pursuing my studies full-time, so I had to get a job, and fortunate enough to be appointed as a lecturer in Mafeking, and I was there for 2 years before I joined UNISA in 2008, and I only finished my PhD at the age of 34, so much older than some. But you know, in South Africa, many people don't have the luxury of finishing their PhD straight away due to various pressures. So I finished my PhD in 2014. Which is, you know, it shaped my career trajectory slightly differently to many others. So from an employment point of view, I was first, my first real job was as a field assistant, and then I lectured in Mafeking for 2 years. During that time, I went to Sinai twice. Also, some of the best experiences of my life, and I'm very, very lucky to have been involved in that research with Professor Ian Micklejohn from Rhodes. And so I was very, very fortunate to be a part of that. And then, I took up a position at UNISA as a lecturer, and I'm through the ranks since then. And I've been at UNISA over a decade. So that's my journey, basically, as to where I am today. And along the way, I've learned a couple things, and I've made many mistakes. So I'd just like to share some of the things I've learned. As a postgraduate student, I learned, you need to stick to your strengths. And I think, you need to be realistic about what those strengths are, and focus on those strengths, develop those strengths. You need to conduct research in something that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about your work, then you're never going to finish it. And then lastly, for any postgraduate students, I always say, find a mentor, don't find a supervisor. A mentor is someone who will not only supervise your research, but they'll also take you under their wing, teach you about research, teach you about academia, teach you about attending conferences. And a mentor is someone who really looks after you as a person. You're not just a student, because students have lots of, it's not all perfect. Life happens. So, having a mentor supervise you is really makes the world of difference. So as a postgraduate student, and if you're looking at getting into research, take a lot of time in terms of finding someone who will be able to look after you as a student and provide the guidance for your career going forward. Then in terms of, if you're an early career researcher, again, stick to your strengths. You need to establish yourself as a specialist in your field. So make sure that you're on top of your game, and try and make a name for yourself as a specialist in a specific niche. And then, don't get sidetracked by peripheral research or tasks. This is a very difficult thing for people in life in general. And, try and make sure that you stay focused on your primary objectives and your primary goals in terms of your research. And, collaboration. So, one thing I've really learned is that, no one can do everything on their own. So really, make sure that you spend time and find a team of people that you can work with, and you're not going to be a specialist in everything, so you need to draw on that experience and those expertise of other people to actually enhance your own science. And also find good students. Working in a team, if you can build that intellectual critical mass, that's a really good way to or become part of a team that has a really good cohort of people working on the same sorts of issues. That's really also will enhance your career. So collaborate as much as possible. It's a key component of success as a researcher nowadays, and collaboration with students is also really important. So yes, you might be driving and their research, but later on in life, they may actually become specialists in their own right and provide, input into your career and provide, enhance your science. And then also bring your strengths to discussions and projects. Make sure that you're able to add value wherever you can. So although I'm a geomorphologist, because of my GIS background, I'm often asked to provide input in terms of spatial data or that sort of stuff. So that's also something that you can leverage your strengths and show how you can add value to any project or discussion. Funding, always be on the lookout for funding opportunities for yourself, or even for your research group or part of your research group or other research groups. Always be on the lookout for research funding opportunities. The NRF have although funding has been cut recently because of the pandemic, the NRF provides multiple avenues of funding opportunities. So really make sure that you make use of the NRF website to find, to look at what different calls have been released in terms of funding options. And there are lots of different options for funding. So really make sure that you make use of the NRF's platform. They are fantastic, and they've really done really tremendous work over the years in terms of funding South African students in South African science. Opportunities. So this is my last slide. Opportunities. Most research is planned, but there's sometimes that these opportunities arise that you need to seize. So make sure that you're not sleeping, and you can recognize opportunities where when they present themselves. Read. Make sure that you're reading the science in your own discipline and in other disciplines. Prof. Stephen Chown did mention this. So make sure that you read and keep up to date with the current developments in your own field. Listen to other researchers, students. Students are a wealth of knowledge, because they generally have more time to read stuff than you do. So students, you can learn a lot from your students. And it's also great just to discuss things with them and new developments in your field. Networking is also extremely important. I think many scientists don't appreciate the value of networking. So it's not only about going to conferences and workshops, it's also about improving your social media profile. And I'm glad that this will also be addressed later on in the day. It's a really important way of advertising your science and getting your name out there, but you can also make some really good connections with international researchers via social media. Perseverance. Science is tough. You're going to be faced with many setbacks, but it's as long as you persevere, and as long as your primary aim is to conduct good science, you can go a long way in terms of developing a research career. And then lastly, celebrate the small victories. If you publish a paper or submit a chapter or whatever it is, celebrate those small victories, because it's a long road. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So celebrate those small victories where you can, and enjoy the journey. So so that's just some of my advice if you're thinking about getting into science, in academia or in research, or it's a long road, but it's a very rewarding journey. And so those are the things that I've learned over the last couple of years. And I'd be open to any questions from any of the participants. So that's all I have to say this morning. Thanks.
Okay. So essentially, David has said a lot of what I wanted to say. So a lot of this is going to be a repeat of what he said. And I think the first thing is just to acknowledge, and these will come up later on again, but just to acknowledge a large number of institutions, funding agencies, of course, APECSSA. Thank you very much, you guys, for putting this together. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. So again, I mean, the start point really is when you're at the beginning of your career, it's very difficult to think, but where do I want to be when I retire in 40 years or 30 years or 35 years or whatever it is? But the start point really for you guys is the end point. You have to start, your starting point essentially, and you're plotting your whole career is based on your end point. So you need to have a relatively good idea of where you want to be when you end. And that's where you are going. And that's how you then plot your whole career. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to aim for the sky. You have to set your trajectory very, but you absolutely have to aim for the sky. There's a saying, if you aim for the moon, you'll fall on the kraal wall. But if you aim for the kraal wall, or only at the top of the kraal wall, you might just land with your face in the dirt. So aim very high, and just work for that. So, I mean, typically big picture science, you know, where do you want to be? I want to be in a position to comprehensively understand something, or whatever that might be. And that only comes about through multidisciplinary science and also through collaboration. And collaboration really is hugely important. Okay, so I think, I mean, quite often we plot our science careers, you know, the saying, if you don't publish, you're dead in the water, work not published is work not done. So what I've done, and I'll explain my whole research career based on my publications over time. So this is how we typically in our field measure people. You know, we look at the number of publications, we look at the impact, as Stephen has said earlier. So I'm going to frame my whole sort of career and where I am based on my publications. So the first thing that I think is crucial is you have to have a very good and a realistic understanding of who you are. Nobody knows you better than you. You know yourself best. So you have to really understand who you are, what you are, and be realistic in that. We can't all be, you know, at the top of the publication lists or whatever. Just know who you are. That's really a good thing. We're not all the same, and that's very good. Remember also that your career is a game. So it's very interesting to read a little bit about evolutionary game theory, strategies. There's a continuous cost-benefit assessment, but your whole career is essentially a game, and you have to be flexible. Okay. Then the next thing to say, and this is what Terry Robinson said to me very early on in my career. It's very easy to feel inadequate if you compare yourself with the Stephen Chowns of the world. Don't do that. Do not compare yourself with senior academics at the end of their careers. That's just not fair, and there's no benefit to that. So, but you can learn from their experiences, of course. So compare and compete with your peers. Identify your peers, and then those are the people that you compare yourself with. So in terms of my own career, don't be scared to move. It actually is quite important to move. You can move institutions, but you can also move careers. Essentially, you can move fields. You can, you know, become more multidisciplinary. I started off studying law, and I don't do anything vaguely related to law today, and I don't remember much of what I learned, but I actually started off studying law. So I completed my PhD at the University of Pretoria. I was fortunate enough to move to Stellenbosch University. I spent a year in France, went back to Stellenbosch University, spent some time there, and then in 2011, I moved to the University of Johannesburg. So I did a few moves throughout my career. I'm always also looking out for other opportunities. It doesn't mean that I'll take it, but I'm quite aware of the opportunities and the positions that are actually being advertised out there. So do not be scared to move. The second thing is make the absolute most of the opportunities that come your way. And then very, very crucial, very important, acknowledge those that have helped you on your way. So Terry Robinson did a lot for me in my early career, and we still publish together. Stephen Chown and Melody Bekioch. Essentially, I went down to Marion Island for the first time in 2004 on Stephen's grant. He took me with him. And shortly after that, I put in a grant with Stephen and Melody as co-PIs on my grant. So they really did an enormous amount for me and for my research career. My move to the University of Johannesburg was largely facilitated by the dean at that point, Kenta Berger. She's now the registrar here. And I maintain a close working relationship with her. And then, of course, Peter Teske, when I was fortunate enough to be awarded a research center at the university, Peter and I share a lab. And I really gratefully acknowledge these people that have given me a big push throughout my career. So just linking back to what David then said, also identify these people, and Stephen also said it, identify these people, and build a relationship with them, and then work through them, where, they will help you in your careers. Accept what comes your way, but work very hard for your promotions and create your own opportunities. That's very important. We're all looking after ourselves first and foremost. There are very few truly altruistic species out there, and humans certainly are not amongst them. So Create your own opportunities. Work incredibly hard. Everybody starts at the bottom. That's the other thing to remember. I started as a senior technician. So when I first moved to Stellenbosch University, and for some years thereafter, I was appointed essentially as a senior technician. When I started my research, I was moved over to a researcher, senior researcher, and so I climbed the ranks as also senior. And as you climb the ranks, your publication outputs become more. But I started as a technician. And in fact, looking back, that was actually quite a good time because there's no admin and things like that take away from you doing what you really wanted to do. David also said this, funding applications are hard. There's a large number, you apply to a lot of things and you get a few of them. But if you don't put your hook out in the water, you will never catch a funding. A source of funding. So there are various within South Africa opportunities for funding. I was really fortunate to be quite successful with attracting funding applications. SANAP here shown on the side, and SANAP has really done a lot for my career. And here we absolutely need to acknowledge Tracy Clarenberg, who works incredibly hard behind the scenes for us at the NRF in terms of, the APEX, but also the SANAP specific work. More recently, I was also involved in some international funding opportunities, sources of funding. So it's not just local. Don't just look local. There are lots of funding opportunities globally. I mean, within SCAR, there are the Young Research Travel Awards and things like that. So always keep a lookout for funding. Everything costs money, and money makes the world go round. So without money, you really are dead in the water. This slide for me is actually very personal, and it's also very important. Life happens, and that's normal. And David said this as well. Science is not everything, and there comes a point in your careers where something happens to people that you love or to yourself, and you have to take time out at that point to be sure that you are okay. It's okay to take time out. There are other things that are infinitely more important than your science careers. So you have to look after yourself and your loved ones outside of work as well. And of course, it will have a huge impact, on your publication records, but that's fine. That doesn't matter. That's what makes you human and not a robot doing science. And then this is my last slide. Again, just emphasizing what David and Stephen said. Everything is about collaboration. What is it? If you're buying property, it's about location, location, and location. But in science, it's about collaboration, collaboration, and collaboration. These are the people that make us who we are. And for me, I absolutely give these people all the credit. When you stand at the end of your career or midway through your career, look around and acknowledge those people that you've worked with. So this is quite interesting for me. I just built a word cloud with the people that I've actually published with. And you can see that some of these people stand out, but there's a huge number of people that I've co-authored papers with. So you don't need to do it alone. And also you build these collaborations with people, as friendships. They start off as friendships, or the people that you have around you now, your lab mates, your friends in your circle at the moment. That's also in science. These are the people that you will collaborate with throughout your careers. So this for me is really important, and and many others not included here, but I need to acknowledge all of these people, because my publications, my research career essentially comes from all of these people. So those were just a few, pointers in terms of my own career, and I'm happy to take questions about these afterwards. Just remember, we all start at the bottom.
That was really great. And we do have some questions building up, but we'll come to them after Seb. Who's next up?
Well, thanks so much. It was great to hear from David and Bettine as well before this. It's really wonderful to to be here and to be asked to come and chat in this APECSS symposium, because it's really nice to see all these friends, even a few of you on the screen, and seeing you in the list on the audience, that I miss so much being all the way here in Sweden. Really well done to the organizers for getting such good attendance and for making such a great program today. You've done a really great job. So as you'll see here on this first slide, I'm just showing you a little bit of my personal journey that connects back to APECSS and SANAP in South Africa. And even though I'm currently in Sweden, really a huge basis of everything I've done in my academic career comes from my connections in South Africa. And as you can see, I started out at the University of Cape Town, working with in a master's and a PhD there with the oceanography department many years ago. And then this journey continued through these connections with SANAP and the community that I had there, with scientists and friends within the SANAP community, and doing these different voyages to the Southern Ocean, collecting data and doing science in the field. And this made this sort of leap from the university degree sort of space for me to the academic career, really starting at CSIR with the SOCO group based in Cape Town in Rosebank. And that was still with direct connections to the SANAP community and SANAP activities and the projects that we had funded by SANAP to work on the ship, since I'm an oceanographer. So really most of my work was based on the cruises and actually being stuck on the ship while all of you guys were so lucky to go onto Marion Island or to Sanai. Us oceanographers stayed on the ship and did our work there, and of course had our own adventures to many cool places. And then eventually I actually left South Africa 4 years ago this month to take up a new position at the University of Gothenburg. And I really still have such strong connections to SANAP, and I really appreciate this because I really enjoy the community, and I've learned a lot from the science and the people that are working in this space. And I'm very fortunate to still continue working on some SANAP projects with people at CSIR, like Sarah Nicholson, who's a PI of a project that I'm co-PI with her on. So this has been really a great journey, and a lot of it has come back down to the base community that I've had in South Africa and the work that I started in South Africa, and through the SANAP community as a whole. So just to note, at the moment, some of you may have heard of the robots that we use in the Southern Ocean, these gliders and these wave gliders that some of you have seen from the ship being deployed. And right now, what we're trying to do is really use these observations and collect them around the sea ice areas on our way down, usually from Cape Town down to Sanai or on other vessels. We'll deploy these robots that really collect these observations for us oceanographers to do some studies in oceanography and in climate sciences around Antarctica. So one thing I thought is that since I'm in Sweden, it's really great to think back of home. Home is in South Africa. And of course, the work and a long time that I spent in Cape Town. And the message here really is that local is lekker, and location, location, location. The opportunities that you have in South Africa around location are really, really important. And in this sense, SANAP really provides a great springboard for your academic careers, in my opinion. What's just on your doorstep is the ability to use state-of-the-art science facilities like the ship, the SA Gullis 2, or the bases, Sanai, Marion, Gough, depending on which science discipline you're in. And you may not always know, especially when you're starting your career, that these facilities are really state-of-the-art and they are world-class. And South Africa is really fortunate to have these facilities to do their science and for you guys to use to do your academic career. And access to these places is fundamental. And I find it really remarkable now that I sit sort of in Europe and realize how things work here, that South Africans have a real advantage to get access to the field using the ship or using the bases. But some people in Europe or the US or other parts of the world may not even be able to get into the field and get down to Antarctica and collect their data until they're really senior in their career. You know, they often don't even do that at a PhD level. So the fact that we have honors students, master students, PhDs, etc., gaining access to the field, and remember, this place is really remote. Antarctica and the Southern Ocean is ridiculously remote when it comes to science and logistics. And you have that ability to access these places. And then the third thing that I thought I'd want to just mention is competition. Now, South Africa and the community, of course, is relatively small on the global space when it comes to the Antarctic sciences. And I really want to frame this as an advantage because it really gives you some space to develop, particularly a niche and an area for your science that you can really launch your career with. And so you can really set your discipline and your niche area in your research very well in South Africa, given that there, is not the vicious competition that you have in other parts of the world where, getting funding, for example, is really, really difficult in other parts of the world where maybe one grant call has 100 applications that are just within the marine science area. In South Africa, you may have that space, which is quite good and great to develop your career, especially your first science outputs. Well, I take an opportunity always to show a nice pic, and here's some of our gliders being deployed near Antarctica off a ship. And basically, I use the photo only to highlight a message here, which is don't take all the opportunities, but grab the right ones. And I think that's really important because I think that we do get a lot of opportunities in South African science to do certain things. I see I have someone has told me that you only see the first slide, which is a bit strange. I'm not sure why. Can you see this now?
There we can see your cursor, but it's on the first slide.
Oh, that's so strange. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing and try it again. I've been going through my slides without knowing that you guys couldn't see that. Sorry about that. Can you see the presentation now?
Yeah, we can see the yellow glider. Yeah, and you're presenting. That's perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. I had no idea it wasn't really working. So maybe you'll see these slides later if they're uploaded, but this is what I was talking through earlier as SANAP being your springboard. And this was about the opportunities. And what I was saying here is that in South Africa, I do believe we get a lot of opportunities, and you may be asked to do something new and take on something extra or work with someone. And this is really great because opportunities are so important towards plotting your research career. But it's really important to identify and reflect a little bit which are the right ones. If you take on too many opportunities, you really might get dispersed and you might not create that real specialization for your academia. And so you're able to start to learn and reflect about which are the right ones. This is really important to guide you in the right direction for the start of your academic career. And then one of the last aspects I wanted to talk about was creating your research niche. So you must realize that really, in fact, from a South African perspective, we might realize that, or might think that the world research community doesn't value what we do in some instances, or you might feel that, well, outside of my area, people are doing things that are much better than I'm doing. And I think one thing, I might have thought of that a lot when I was a few years ago. And I'm starting to realize that the work that you do in South Africa and the opportunities that you have to do Southern Ocean and Antarctic science is really important, and it's required for the world to note that. Your science, if you really are good at your science, the world is going to really bring you in with them into the research space at a global scale. And some of these might lead to you being invited into certain committees, panels, or collaborations. And this is very important for establishing your network for your career. And one thing is really to not be shy. Don't be shy and hide your research and ideas. It's really important that you put your hand up and you speak out, and you really get involved with what's going on when you are included in sciences outside of your space and in forums. And it's these kind of areas that are hotspots for developing your network, learning other disciplines and other things about your science, and creating long-standing collaborations. So it's really important that you don't underestimate the value of the science that you do. And then the last thing I'll mention here is that don't forget your roots that made you, that springboarded you into academia. Your SANAP roots and your connections, like the people, and Bettine really mentioned this in her last slide, are what has really helped you get to where you are. And this is really valuable for as you continue, and it will really continue to bring you joy. So don't forget your roots and where you came from, and what SANAP and this community that we're within this forum really gives you and brings to your science in the past and in the future. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Seb. That was really great. I think a theme that's coming out across everybody that's spoken this morning is that we need to know ourselves and take time to know ourselves so that we can identify our strengths and also figure out what is the right opportunity for us and what are our real passions as we plan and aim for the moon. So we have many questions in about 15 minutes. So I'll just highlight a couple of them and then just remind the panelists that they can answer any remaining questions on the Google Doc. So I'll start off with a general question. The stats globally sits at only 4% of PhDs ending up in an academic job. So the question as an early career researcher or postdoc or PhD is, at what stage do you start to think, if I don't find a university job soon, I'll have to do something else and leave academia? At what point do you essentially pull the plug on this? Or perhaps more importantly, did you keep it in the back of your mind and plan an alternative career? And how much time did you invest in developing alternative skills and connections?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I didn't really have a backup plan. But my first job was in Mafeking, 300 kilometers from Johannesburg, 350 kilometers from Johannesburg, at a rural campus in the middle of nowhere. So in terms of looking for academic positions, not everyone's going to get a job at UCT. So you really need to cast your net a little bit wider in South Africa if you're thinking about, getting into academia. I mean, I work at UNISA, which is not traditionally thought of as a research university by any stretch of the imagination. So, you need to, yes, an institution and getting associated with an institution is important, but you also need to think, more broadly about, moving into, universities in South Africa, all the universities, as well as externally. I mean, Seb is in Sweden. So, there are positions all over the world, and you need to network and find those opportunities where they arise. So, so from my point of view, no, I I didn't have a backup plan, but I wasn't very picky about where I started out. And as Bettine says, you start at the bottom. So I started at the bottom at a rural campus in South Africa. So, just look for opportunities wherever they arise. I don't know if anyone else has to add anything.
Guys, I mean, everything, it's not about the institution. Some of the, let me think, I want to say worst researchers. I don't mean it like that, but some of the people that are, not all the best researchers are at top universities. You don't need to be at Wits or UCT or Stellenbosch University to be somebody. You make your life and your research career, your group is as good as what you are and your group members are. So essentially, you can have the top lab at the University of Fort Hare. Werner is a very good example. I moved, for example, from Stellenbosch University, who's regularly in the top universities, to the University of Johannesburg almost 10 years ago, and people thought, are you crazy? But it's not about that. I mean, UJ today is doing incredibly well, and the people work very hard. But I actually think that quite often, if you are not at a UCT or a Wits or a Stellenbosch University, there is not that much pressure. So, and also, if you walk into your lab and you close the door behind you, then your group is as good as what you make that group inside. In my field, some of the top researchers are based at the University of Venda, which, intuitively you would think, oh, I'll never take a position there because it's not UCT. It's not about UCT. It's about what you make of your research. In fact, for funding, it might actually be easier to secure funding if you are at the University of Fort Hare or the University of Venda compared to UCT, just because the funding agencies, and Tracy will talk about that a little bit later, but they also have to equalize, and there's a lot of funding going into the sort of traditionally weaker universities to build them up. So don't think if it's not UCT, I'm not accepting the job. That is crazy. Don't do that. A job is a job. Doesn't matter where it is. You make that job. You make your playing field in that position.
Yeah, and I just want to say about Isabel's the comment you relayed about that very few get from PhD to academic level, and that's very true, and that's like a reality of the space that we work in, is that very few are able to actually make a full-on career in academia. But I do think perseverance is very important, because if I reflect back, I really thought of myself as not being an academic for many years and right throughout my PhD. But the passion for the science is what carried me on and kept on the perseverance around, keep trying and keep going at it. And eventually the opportunities open up for academia to work for you. Not always, obviously not everyone will have those opportunities, but if you really are passionate about the academic career and the research you do, then don't give up too easily. But if you also feel that your passion is maybe not quite there for academia, then do make that quick choice and be ready to make that transition to get out of academia and go into another field or into business or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I guess that reflects what Bettine said in her presentation about knowing that life is always adapting, and you need to be willing to make those changes, whether it is changing to a university that you maybe think is less better, or there's less opportunities, or making a decision to change your career.
Again, I think it's just a summary of what I've said. Never look a given horse. I mean, let's say, for example, a position opens up. Never ever look at University of irreproducible results or whatever. Apply for it. Why not? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply to UCT if there's a position, or Wits or Harvard or Princeton or whatever it is. But it's not just about that. And that's something that I saw. I mean, if you look around at whatever university you are, and you look at people that work with you in that university, there's always some people that are excellent, that are really good. Then there's some people that are, not so into research, for example. They're more into teaching. There are other people that you sometimes think, I wonder how they got the job, because they never really do anything other than, stay at home and do their personal stuff. So the bottom line is, doesn't matter where you are, if there's an opportunity for a position, take it. It doesn't mean that you can't apply in a year's time to another place or when positions open up. But don't sit on your hands and think, I'm going to wait for Harvard to advertise a position or the University of Berkeley to open up a position. Sometimes those top universities, pressure in those top universities are enormous. They will break you. You have to be incredibly strong. I've got a work colleague from Stellenbosch University. He accepted a position at UC Berkeley, and of course they're always number 2 or 3 in the world. And you walk in there and you're competing with absolutely the top people in the world. And he went from working very hard at Stellenbosch University to working all the time. He, at some point he got cancer and he couldn't take time out, essentially, to make sure that he's well, or the time out that he took was so short. He was basically in treatment, but still writing papers, because otherwise you just fall behind. And so don't stare yourself blind, I think, against top universities. And if a position comes your way, then take it. Something is better than nothing. And, from a position, you can always later on look around if other things are published. Like I said, I'm always aware of, positions that are being advertised and making cost-benefit assessments. Should I apply for this position? What is it? But also, having said that, don't jump around too much, because then, it takes a long time to establish a lab and a research group. So you can't move to a new position every 2 months. That's not what I'm saying. But be aware of positions. But it's always better to apply from a position where you are. Lots of these jobs also say, oh, we need 5 years of experience. We need 10 years of experience. And you can't get that sitting at home. So you only build up experience working, basically. I see Seb nodding, but I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah. So just to make the full circle, if something comes your way, take it. Create your own opportunities, but also take opportunities that come your way. Never look a given horse in the mouth. Never pass, somebody wants to give something to you, take it.
Yeah, so sometimes it's actually better to be a big fish in a small pond than it is to be a small fish in a very big pond. So, I followed a very unconventional route in my career, and it's worked out pretty well for me, in that I was given many opportunities which I would never have been given, had I been at a bigger university. But the thing is, context is everything. What works for me may not work for other people. So you have to actually charter your own path in terms of where you want to take your career. And someone else's success is not your failure. So don't worry about what if someone else gets a position somewhere. Opportunities are always there for you to grab. And like Seb said, you just have to know about, choosing the right opportunity is also very important. It's a very, very, something that you really need to think about. And, but at the end of the day, you make your own decisions and you live with them, and then you do the best you can, so everyone else's, journey will be different, and you just do the best you can with it, with the information you have available at that point in time, and then you just see where the chips fall. So, it's, there's no perfect strategy here. For everyone, it's going to be different.
And don't be afraid to ask for advice then. If you have an opportunity and you don't know, because you can't identify earlier on in your career necessarily which opportunities are good and which ones are maybe less good. So I think David mentioned the mentor thing, which is really important. So, don't be afraid to go and ask people about an opportunity and get their opinion on it. Maybe they know, especially senior mentors might realize what that opportunity is for you or isn't for you, because you only start to realize which opportunities are really good and which are less good a bit later in your career. So you lean on the mentor there. That could be helpful.
This relates to one of the questions that somebody has posed about what David said is identify your strengths and go for it. How do you know? similarly, how do you know what's a good opportunity? And when you're early in your career, how do you really know what are your strengths? And then on top of that, with all the reading that one has to do, how do you make sure that you're on top of the reading and read broadly enough to kind of figure out what your strengths are?
I mean, if I'm assuming that lots of people here, are studying, or they're at least into a master's or a PhD or early career, at that point, you know what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. I think the most important thing is that never feel that, no position will trap you. It's not as if you think, okay, if I take this, or if I take this opportunity, all the other doors are closing for me and I will have no place else. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. That's not true. You need to put that out of your mind very quickly. In fact, nowadays, people switch careers and not just workplaces. So you might start off as A, move into the field of B, and then end your career in C or D, something like that. So if you have nothing but one opportunity, then that opportunity is absolutely the best opportunity. It doesn't matter what it is, take it. It doesn't close doors. It just, moves you around and it moves you up. So if you have 2 or 3 opportunities that are on the table for you at the same time, then spend a little bit of time and just do a cost-benefit assessment. Every single place has costs and benefits. And the other thing is that when you are in a position, we often look out and we see other people in other positions and we think, oh, but they're having it so better than me. The saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. Don't be fooled. The grass is always greener on the other side, potentially because there's a lot of manuring happening there, The bottom line is, it's not, you make your own happiness, essentially. If you have 2 or 3 opportunities, then you can do the cost benefit for each of them. But if you have only one, take it, because that opportunity is better than no opportunity. Grass is not always greener on the other side. You make your own happiness and you build your own career, essentially.
Thanks, Bettine. We are coming to the end of our time slot here. I just want to remind everybody that people have been answering questions in the Google Docs. And if you have more questions, just put them on the Google Docs and the presenters will speak to them. I do have time for one more question. Maybe, Seb, because you're in Europe, what did you find were the major differences in your access to career opportunities as somebody now in Europe versus in South Africa?
Yeah, well, what springs to mind is that in Europe, generally, there is a lot of opportunity for what Bettine was talking about, money. There is more opportunity here to, let's say, grow that funding pool and then do more research and maybe grow a team quite quickly. If you are fortunate enough to get that funding, because that funding is available, let's say bigger, let's say outside of South Africa, but the competition is much, much more hectic. Since we're in a South African forum, I've got to throw in a few words like hectic and cool, lekker. But at the same time, like we always really, we always downplay, I think, when we're in South Africa, our South African opportunities. And they are also massive compared to Europe or the US or Asia, whatever it is. South Africa actually has got this room for you to take opportunities and grow with it very, very quickly, compared to maybe the fact that there's less space in Europe. And then, like I mentioned, the fact of what you have been given or made available for you in South Africa in terms of infrastructure, the access to the field, especially in this field, I think especially in Antarctic sciences, those opportunities are really world class, and we really don't have that opportunity. Not everyone around the world has that opportunity to get on a 130-meter icebreaker like the Agulhas go down, do research, have ship days available to them, go to the bases and have a month or two or whatever it is to do their research, geomorphology, whatever it may be, in Antarctica. So the opportunities are different, but they are not necessarily less in one place than another.
I think it is important that as South Africans, we don't feel that we are being sidelined by the global north. We do play an important role within a academic research body, which is really dominated by journals based in the States and in Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, thanks everybody for this really insightful discussion and for giving your time. It's been great. And now we're going to end off with a prize giving, a lucky draw prize giving for 5 of our attendees who will be receiving 4 book prizes, each 1 book prize. And these are Siva Klokash, Nasira Musa, Maxine King, Mia Momberg, and Percy Muafe. Thank you for attending, and we'll be in touch with you so that you can get access to your prize, courtesy of the Antarctic Legacy of South Africa. And then as just one more reminder, the questions on the Google Doc, and if you can just speak to, maybe the panelists can fill up questions that we haven't had time to answer, or that would be great.